This is Reese from Bicycle Sport Shop with some tips on putting your box bike back together. First, let's talk about the tools. You'll need a pair of cutters, a set of metric hex wrenches, a pedal wrench, and finally, a torque wrench. Let's get started. Next, take everything out of the box using the clippers to remove zip ties holding on packaging and inspect items for damage. Keep an eye out for a small box containing parts such as rotors, skewers, bolts, and other things that may have to be removed for shipment. Next, we'll attach the handlebars. We prefer to use a stand, but if you don't have one at home, you can set your bike up like this in the box to make it a little easier. Depending on the pack, you may have to loosen the bolts on the top and the sides here with your 4mm Allen wrench to turn the stem to face the right way. After that, tighten these guys back down according to the torque specs. And we'll start by removing the faceplate so we can install the handlebar. Take the 4 bolts all the way out of the faceplate and put your handlebar into place, making sure that your cables aren't tangled or switched around the wrong way. Next, we'll install it by putting the faceplate back on and tightening down the 4 bolts that hold the handlebar in place. Don't worry too much about getting things straight or even right now. We'll make all the adjustments at the end of the video. Now to attach our rear derailleur. For this step, you can place the bike on top of the box like this, but be careful. It's not exactly the most stable surface. For this, we'll use our 5mm hex wrench, and we'll attach the rear derailleur onto the derailleur hanger, like so. You can get it started using the ball end of the wrench if you have ball ends to your wrenches, but you should definitely finish up using the box end, as ball ends sometimes have a tendency to strip. Once you get your derailleur tightened and in place, no need to tighten it overly so, you're ready to move on to the next step. Now to install the rear wheel. If you have a quick release skewer like this, you'll want to install the axle into the wheel so that the cam lever is on the opposite side of the derailleur and cassette over here, like so. Now, we can begin to install it on the bike. We'll gently slide this guy up into the frame here, moving the chain to the opposite side of the cassette with one hand holding the wheel, and with the other we can pull the derailleur out to give room for our wheel to slide up inside of here. Now we want to make sure that the rotor aligns inside the caliper so as it doesn't scratch the frame. And then we'll take our hands and we'll pull the wheel axle up into place, tighten down our lever, and now your rear wheel is installed and good to go. Installing the front wheel uses a similar process to installing the rear. We want to make sure that our rotor is lined up between the disc calipers. We'll pick up the front of the bike and roll our wheel in here, lining it up and dropping it into place. Once it's in place, we'll take our axle, in this case a through axle, line it up in the holes. This may take a little wiggling to get it in just right, and push it through to the other side. Now to tighten this, we'll use our 6mm box wrench, insert it into the axle, and tighten it down. You won't get very much leverage using the small end on the outside like this, so I recommend using the long arm to give yourself the leverage you need to make sure that your front axle is installed tightly. Installing the pedals, remember that there are right and left specific pedals. Typically, they'll be labeled with the letter R or L on the end of the spindle here. Both pedals will tighten by rotating forward towards the front of the bike. We recommend you thread them in by hand first, like this, until the pedal is almost entirely threaded in. And then, when you're finished with that, you'll take your pedal wrench here and finish tightening the pedal the rest of the way down. making sure that your pedals are tight so that they don't come off when you ride. And finally, for the finishing touches, come through and set your seat height, aligning your seat with the top tube of the bike, and setting up the handlebar controls so that your handlebar is even and the controls are comfortable for your riding style. Next, set your torque wrench to the specifications printed on the components and tighten everything down. When you're tightening the faceplate of the stem, tighten the bolts in an X pattern and try to make sure that the top of the faceplate and the bottom of the faceplate are evenly spaced. Finally, go through and double check your work. It's worth it to make sure that your wheels are properly seated, everything is properly tightened down, your derailleur and brakes work as you expect them to by going out on an easy ride and making sure that everything is set properly and tightened before you go out on a big trip. Last and most importantly, have fun.